Hey, welcome to Faith and Flavor. Hope you're having a great day. I hope that your year so far has been a great year. And I hope that even if it hasn't, you're looking forward to the rest of the year being great. Because we do have a lot of power, right, in our thoughts, in our minds, and
absolutely.
our suggestions, and our words. Power of death and life are in the tongue. Or in the power of the tongue. Death and life are in the power of the tongue.
We're going to do one where you're talking, and I'm just going to hold up a mirror like talking to the mirror, talking to myself.
True. And that's the thing. Like, I do hear people who are what we would consider seasoned people, not necessarily ministers, just seasoned Christians who have been in the way,
right,
for a lot of years, and sometimes their speech is so negative, which by the way, that's all free because it has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. But I guess in a way it kind of does, because a lot of times people are like, well, the devil's been fighting me. Well, maybe it's not the devil. Maybe you're just unequally yoked with your mentality and what God wants for you.
That's true.
Everybody thinks being unequally yoked means, oh, I don't need to marry a person who's not a Christian. Your mind can be unequally yoked with what God's promises has said to you.
Well,
right?
That's a big slap in the face. Woo!
Yeah, there you go. But
thanks.
You're welcome. No, but sometimes we are in delay, and we think that God needs to be moving on our time when, Noah was on the ark, right? Honestly, God that I read, now some of you Bible scholars may see something different, but I don't read where God told him it's time to get out of the ark. It was a process.
Right.
He had the dove. He sent him out. The dove didn't come back. One dove come back and brought an olive branch, and then the second one brought the olive branch. And so it was a process that had to take place when it was time for him to leave the ark.
And can you imagine building and being in it for that much time with animals?
Yeah. Well, listen, I live with one human animal, now I live right now with 3. So, but the third time was Noah. I'm trying not to mix it up because most people say Moses, but I try not to mix that up. But a lot of times Noah had to just be in the moment and perceive and feel in his heart what was delay and what was denial.
Right, because that's a lot of faith. I mean, it's something I just don't think we could comprehend that much time, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's definitely stepping out in faith, and
Well, if we go through the fact that the process really became the instruction, right? We all go through processes. And I'm going to stop right there because, the process of this.
I was just thinking that what a great segue, because you have to process, actually making something.
So really, I did it easy, and I just took some Bisquick and mixed it up with the way it says, and it's supposed to make 4 or so 4-inch pancakes. But all I did was put butter in here, and we can't show you on the stove today, so I'm just going to show you kind of the finished product, and I'll be back and forth. But the word's still going to come out the same. How's that?
So I don't know about
these pancakes because I've never tried it.
But you just took the pineapple with the cherries and just kind of lightly cooked it on the stove top
so
to start.
I just put butter.
Okay,
because everything tastes better with butter, and hopefully it won't let the batter stick, right? And then I just heated up the pineapples.
Okay.
I stuck some cherries in there. Of course, it's prettier if you just have one cherry in the middle, but my husband likes cherries, so I put a few extra ones in there. You could put brown sugar.
Okay.
It's a little, if you're going to drown it in syrup, I wouldn't. My husband, he would. I'm just going to tell you. But I'm making it for him. Well, he couldn't make this if his life depended on it. But
I'm feeling better about myself. There you go.
Oh, trust me. Trust me. He tried to hard boil 6 eggs in the microwave once.
And he blew it up?
Yeah. we threw the microwave away.
Oh goodness.
That
okay.
was way back when. So everything was like, you couldn't just take the light and clean.
Okay, okay.
It wasn't like they had like this vent and the light was stuck up in there. Oh my gosh, it was, and it smelled like eggs. So
Oh, that was bad. Yes.
so my husband does not cook at all, but so I just put that in here. You could put some brown sugar, and yeah, it would give it more of a like a pineapple upside down cake kind of feel to it. But this is what we have today.
Okay.
So I'm going to put it back on the stove, and I'm going to pour. Hopefully, it'll stop kind of in between these two. If not, I'll cut it. But
so you're just going to pour a little bit on each of these.
So I'm going to do it. Well, here, I'll show it to him here. Well, I feel like it's not level, so it's probably going to drip a little. But let's see. Let's see what it looks like here.
There you go.
We're going to hope we're going to hope it turns out pretty. And I guess the idea would be to make sure that it is covered on the fruit. And again, like I said, I haven't done this, so I don't really know. And I guess the pancakes will taste better with lumps in it. We'll see.
That works good.
I don't typically use Bisquick and stuff for like this kind of thing, but
there we go.
It was the path of least resistance.
Yeah. See, there we go.
So we're gonna see.
That's what it looks like. Okay.
Yes.
So then you put it back on the stove.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put it on there, and it'll get little bubbles in it.
Okay.
Supposedly, hopefully.
Okay.
We're gonna hope and pray, and then I'm gonna flip them, and we'll talk while I'm doing all that. But really, a lot of the yeah, it'll be fine.
It's on.
It's on, and I've got it kind of not real high. A lot of times we carry yokes. You know, the Bible says that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So if you feel like your yoke is too much, then we need to question it. Is that really a God thing? Because, you know, do I believe that the devil will fight things? Yes. Do I believe that some things are tough? Absolutely. Do I believe that there are times when we may feel like, am I doing this for the right reasons? Yes. But listen, if it robs you of your peace and it robs you of your joy, I'm not saying it's not from God. I'm saying talk to God.
Right.
Because if he says my burden is easy and my yoke is easy and my burden is light, why are we carrying?
That's why sometimes people think even if they're doing Christian or church service, you can overextend yourself too. And so if you're doing it just to be busy or your busyness becomes consuming, that's when you need to take a step back. And I've had to realize that too, that you need to make sure that, you know, you put your family in the right place along with your volunteer, or, you know, even if you're working, you know, doing stuff for others, you need to make sure you have everything in perspective of what, you know, what you do, kind of like we're doing here with the process of, you know, putting things together.
Right. Well, one of the things that when we talk about the burden and the yoke and all of that, you know, it may be a yoke. It just may not be his.
That's very true.
You know, so when we take on a yoke, if it's not easy and it's robbing us of our identity and of our purpose of what we feel like we're aligned with,
right?
Then, yeah, I don't necessarily constantly feel like that we're walking in alignment with his authority. Now, like I said, I do think that there are times when possibly the fight is there, and, you know, the greater the fight, the bigger the victory and the reward. You know, okay, I get all that. I can see that to an extent, truthfully.
Right.
But I think a lot of times the devil gets the blame for our own action. We took on stuff. We took on too much. We took on stuff that we weren't supposed to be yoked with. We did it for whatever reason. You know, your heart can be really good. It can be really kind. It can be all of those things. And you're doing it for all good reasons, just not God reasons necessarily. I'm not saying being good is not God. I'm not saying being loving is not God. But it doesn't mean that God had you do that.
Right.
It means we chose to do that, you know. And that can be harsh. It can be tough, you know, no doubt.
Well, you know, I was thinking too that, you know, I had one chaplain tell me that, you know, when I would go someplace, excuse me, and I was, you know, as a hospice volunteer, and I'd find that I really wasn't making what I thought making much of a difference when I got to the place. And he said, but remember, 90% is showing up. So maybe you're giving somebody else a break by sitting with the patients or just your presence alone. But then there are times, like I said, that you want to make sure that you're not just doing something for busyness, or to say that, you know, like pat yourself on the back that I did something. You want to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and then God will lead you in the direction you need to go. I mean, in my personal experience.
Well, you know, even in 1 Corinthians in chapter 10, verse 23 says that all things are lawful, but not expedient. Not all things aren't expedient. So while God may allow stuff, and God may be like, okay, yeah, you know, kudos, you were kind, but you were distracted. This is really what I had purpose for you, you know. And so, and again, I don't take away from people being kind. You know, does God have to fall down from heaven with the, you know, does he need to send an airplane with a sign on the back that says, you know, do this, do that? No. But in our heart, if we know that it's pulling away from our identity, if we know that the yoke is becoming really hard, then back up and take a look and see if our priorities are really God's priorities. These don't look TikTok perfect, but they smell amazing. They do smell good.
Isn't it? I mean, taste makes way more than presence, right?
Yes, but they're not bad.
No, they're not.
They smell amazing, honestly. And I'll separate it into two in case somebody wants to eat one. But really, they didn't turn out bad.
No, not at all. Looks good.
But they're not, you know, like.
Now you definitely need some syrup, or you know, something. Or maybe even honey.
Well, I don't know if you would need syrup. Let me see. Let me take a little. Now, see, I would eat it like that.
Okay.
But it is not sweet. But that's how I would eat it. Well, I probably wouldn't eat it.
Well, you know,
but if I was.
What's interesting is I noticed too, like, if you think about it, pancakes by themselves don't really have a taste to them. You have to add something,
yes, butter,
you know. And so just like with us, when we go to serve,
I'm going to flip this over so they can see the pineapple under.
That looks. Oh, that's right. I forgot the pineapple. That would be the sweetness. But it adds, you know, to us, you know, doing something for others. You know, you make it a process and you add a layer each time, and I think that helps you to decide which, you know, way God is actually directing you to do. You know, there's times that when I go to the nursing home that, you know, the people are a little bit sleepy, or they're just not really, you know, I mean, have a lot of oomph, right? So I improvise and come up with ways to do, but there are times I have to be careful not to be distracted and thinking like, okay, well, when I leave, I can do this or I can do that, because God wants me to be present in that moment, and, you know, whatever it is you're doing. And if you give it your all, then that truly is quality over quantity. Because like I said, we can go from point A to point B to point C, just keep going and going and going. And God's like, that's not what I intended. And then you go home and your spouse or your kids are like, what about us, you know? So when you talk about the distractions, it's got to be where it's, you know, I guess dispersed in the right way of.
Well, there's, you know, you can prune a tree or you can poison the tree, right? So pruning the tree obviously is a process.
Right.
If you go in there and you poison the tree, you're going to see an instant leaves falling or whatever, right? If you go in there and you trim a little bit, in the next season, you're going to see the reward of your labor of pruning that tree. And trust me, I don't keep plants alive, so I'm not the authority on that. I'm just telling you that it's like losing weight, right? If I was to get on the scale and see a pound off every day, in my head, I would be like, yay! But is it going to stay? Is it true weight loss, right? Whereas if you really want to make effective weight loss changes, it's a process. You're going to see 2 pounds a week maybe. But most medical doctors will tell you that that process is going to give you better results than to starve yourself and not get the results, because you're really not losing weight, you're losing muscle, right? And so if we look at the process of that, we know that it's delay, it's delay for our betterment. It's not like, listen, who wouldn't want to jump on the scale and see 5 pounds come off every day? It's not feasible, but who wouldn't?
Right.
But if I'm going to gain that back at the end of the month, and I've lost the 20 pounds I want to lose, and then at the end of the month, I have 20 pounds this month, but then I start eating again and I put it back on, was that denial?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where the denial is that you can't keep, you have to stay healthy across the board,
Right.
And you have to maintain it, just like with anything. Anything obsessive is normally going to come back in a negative way. And that, whether it be weight or your mental attitude or even service to others. If it's service to God, He's going to let you know that. But you're right. Getting on the scale every day, normally, even if you're a person that's, let's say you're doing it for muscle building, right? And you want to put some on every day, is going to normally have a negative connotation, and
it raises cortisol, right? So I believe that when we jump in and to do things for God, and we want it to work out, we're just all gung-ho, and then we hit a wall and we're like, God just doesn't. No, maybe God's teaching you a process that's going to make you healthier in the long run, rather than all the stress hormones and all that kicking in, whatever. And I'm not talking science, I'm talking spiritually speaking, like, like people get flustered, like, but God, I thought, and then they want to give up the fight because they've had a little bit of a delay, and there were times in the Bible that obviously, they wanted to, they could have made it across the Red Sea and through the wilderness and got to the promised land in like 40-ish days, right? And so they didn't do that. There was a process, but what they did in the process determined their outcome.
Right.
So while
Absolutely.
Joshua and Caleb seeing the process as a positive, the ones who were grumbling and complaining and disobedient didn't get to walk into the promise because their processing of the process kept them out because of the fear, the doubt, and the unbelief. And there was delays, not just necessarily because of God. There was delays because of themselves.
Right. Right.
Now, I'm not saying that God can't use a delay and that God doesn't give you a delay, because maybe what you're working for may not even be what God wants. Even though it's not a denial, He may bless you in that delay, and He may not tell you, no, you can't do it. But if that yoke is tough on you, should you be doing it? And I'm not there to make any kind of argument whether you should be doing something or not doing something. That's between you, God, your heart, and the yoke, right?
Right.
But I will say that just because there's delay doesn't mean that there's a denial. And if there's a denial, that could have been reason for the delay, right? But if we're seeking, my dad used to say, if I'm wrong, I'm sincerely wrong, because everything that he tried to do it with his heart,
right. Okay.
in the right place. Great. But if you keep hitting walls, that's not necessarily denial. That may just be God protecting you, because walls are there to keep people out, and it's also there to keep people or predators out, but it's also to keep you safe in. But you don't stay in your house every day behind the walls. You get out.
Yeah, and it's just trying to decipher what is. And sometimes it does help to actually make a list of the pros and cons, and pray over it and ask God to direct on which way. Because there are times that you, like you said, you really think to yourself, why is this not happening right now, or why is this being prolonged? And I guess that's where the huge trust factor comes in, that there's a reason, and maybe it is He's saying no to you, or He's saying wait. It's just that discernment of trying to really hear His voice, and
And sometimes God's silence is kind of a waiting ground for discernment.
Right.
Maybe He wants us to learn and discern in the situation, in the process, in the not necessarily denial, but the delay. The wait is not wasted if it's working on you and in you.
In you.
So have a great day on purpose.